Last week, if you were here last week, you got one of those little Klingons, what I would call them, that about our Thrive campaign, and you could put it on your bathroom mirror, and I did, and it was really a positive, helpful thing for me, because every time I'd go into the bathroom, I'd see that little Klingon there, and I would say a quick prayer. God, I pray that you will bless our Thrive campaign, and may it just be amazingly successful. And I hope that you're doing the same thing. We wanted to kind of lift that up every day this week until really it culminates on Christmas Eve, that you pray for the success of the Thrive campaign. I want to talk about something that's kind of unpleasant this morning. And if you bear with me, I think you'll understand why I want to talk about something that's unpleasant. And what I want to talk about is vomit. I know it's a disgusting subject. Maybe it's politically incorrect to talk about that in church. As far as I know, there are only two places where we'll find that word in the entire Bible. And think of all the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of words that are contained in Holy Scripture, only found twice. The first one is with the story of Jonah, when he's down in the belly of the whale, and the whale comes up to the beach, and it vomits him out onto the beach, along with all that other yucky stuff that's been sloshing around down inside the stomach of that whale. And in this story, where Jesus says, I wish that you were either hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I vomit you out of my mouth. And that's pretty rough language. Now, actually, some of the translations just use the word spit. But spit doesn't quite indicate what it really, I think, is intended. In some of the study Bibles, if you look down at the bottom of the page, there'll be a footnote where the translation uses the word spit, and in parentheses, it'll say that Greek word also means vomit. It's a disgusting image, and it kind of conjures up some very unpleasant associations with that word. You know, how many people have had the stomach flu, the stomach virus? You know, you're just kind of doing fine one day, and then all of a sudden you feel this kind of, I don't feel so hot. And the next thing you know, you're running to the bathroom as fast as you can, and hopefully you get there by the stool, and you're able to vomit into the toilet bowl. And when you get through, you know, your skin is clammy, you're ashen color, your heart is beating, and you kind of think, wow, what's going on here? What's happening to me? I must be sick. And then before you can even answer that question, you do it all over again. And then maybe you just do it over and over till the end of the day. And then by the end of the day, your stomach muscles hurt, and you're dehydrated, and you just really have kind of had it. How many can remember, maybe this is my experience, maybe it's not your experience, but being in grade school or even junior high school, and right in the middle of the classroom, somebody gets sick? That ever happened to you, you know? And it seemed like what usually happened then is that other people would get sick too. It was like a chain reaction. Like suddenly several people are throwing up right in the middle of the classroom. The kids are running to the side of the room, and they're opening the windows to try to get that horrible smell out of there. And I shared with you about a year ago in that series of sermons called Lessons from the Big Bar Ranger Station how the very last time I got drunk, I just embarrassed myself so much and made a fool of myself. Remember that story? I'd been drinking all night, and I threw up in between taverns, and threw up inside my friend's car, inside the car, and on myself. And still, I went into another tavern and ordered another drink, and then that just really put me over the edge. Crawled back in the seat of the car. Next morning, I looked at my clothes on the floor, and I said, oh, what a fool I was. You know, I'll never do that again, ever. And that was 41 years ago, and I haven't stayed true to that word. So the word vomit conjures up some nasty and some unpleasant memories and associations. We don't like to think Jesus could ever possibly be so disgusted with us that it would make him want to vomit. Do we? We love that little song that we learn as children. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. We would not like that song so well if we changed the words to something like this. Jesus vomits at my name, knows my every guilt and shame. Just the mention of my name causes me to stomach pain. Wouldn't be so fun, would it? Wouldn't like that song. I think the word spit is obviously less noxious, but it's less effective in communicating disgust. I moved to Missouri when I was going to become a junior in high school. Went up to St. Louis and Kirkwood High School, and I moved there from California. Never lived in Missouri before. I lived in Utah and Colorado and Oklahoma and California, but never lived in Missouri. Never saw a persimmon tree. And my best friend in high school moved up from Montgomery, Alabama, and they had persimmon trees in Alabama, and we liked to hunt and fish, and we were in the great outdoors, and I came across a persimmon tree in early fall, and knowing I didn't know what it was, he said, "Here, try this. It's really a good little sweet fruit that grows naturally in Missouri," and so I did. And immediately, my mouth felt like cotton, and it sucked every bit of saliva out of my mouth, and I spit that, whatever it was, that piece of persimmon I had, and it just took time for your tongue to kind of return back again to normal. But I spit it out. I didn't vomit it out. I spit it out. And that's the difference, I think, between spit and vomit. It was distasteful, but it wasn't so disgusting that caused me to vomit. So, when are we so bad that Jesus feels like vomiting us out of his mouth? When we are bland, lukewarm, or indifferent to our discipleship. Well, what's so bad about lukewarm? On the scale of things, you got cold, and you've got lukewarm, and you got hot. Wouldn't lukewarm be better than cold? And yet Jesus says, I wish that you were either hot or cold, but lukewarm, I vomit you out of my mouth. What's so bad about lukewarm? Well, I was thinking about that. What does lukewarm mean? And so we might describe what it's like to be lukewarm in these kind of words. Indifferent. No big deal. No excitement. No energy. Blasé. I can take it or leave it. If I have time, I'll get around to it. It's just kind of low on my priority list right now. Doesn't mean much to me. Those are the kind of terms I think that would describe what it means to be a lukewarm follower of Jesus Christ. And disciples who are lukewarm, if they are making up the church, what is the church going to accomplish with lukewarm disciples? Not a heck of a whole lot, is it? If it's not high on our priority list, if we have better things to do, not going to accomplish much. So if lukewarmness describes our discipleship, and that's what it means to follow the one who laid down his life for us, Jesus says, that makes me sick to my stomach. I want nothing to do with that. So what has caused Jesus in his revelation to John of Patmos to say this to the church at Laodicea about lukewarmness makes him want to vomit? Well, let's let Jesus answer that. So if we would read on, Jesus says, after all, you say, I'm rich, I'm grown wealthy, I don't need a thing. You don't realize, he said, that you are miserable, pathetic, poor, blind, and naked. You just think you're self-sufficient, but you're not. The richest man in the world is Bill Gates. I'm just going to use him as an example, but he's probably a pretty good person, obviously very, very talented and creative, and he's one of the great philanthropists of our age. But let's just say we know that he's the richest man in the world. His total wealth, somewhere around $49 billion a year. That's even too big for me to comprehend. That means essentially that he makes more in 1 second than I do all year. Just on the scale. It's hard to comprehend something like that. But let's just say God said, well Bill, we're taking you out of your home in Seattle, and we're going to airdrop you in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. We're going to take away everything except the clothes on your back. You're not even going to have a pair of shoes. No matches, no knife, no fishing line, just you. And the next nearest town is 500 miles away. Okay, you're on your own. How would he do? Probably not so well. Because there is money absolutely useless. If he's going to use it to start a fire, he'd still need a match, wouldn't he? Yeah. Or what happens is someone like a Bill Gates goes to the doctor and complaining about kind of a pain in my side here. And they do a bunch of tests, and the doctor comes back and says, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you are in late stages of pancreatic cancer. You've got from about 4 weeks to 4 months to live. And Bill says, you don't understand, I'm the world's richest man. I can throw billions of dollars at this. You can take my pancreas out and put another one in, whatever. All the treatments in the world, money's no option. No object. It doesn't work that way. Sorry. At this point in time, no matter how much money you have, it's not going to save your life. See where I'm getting at? Wealth can be an illusion of security and well-being. And God is disgusted with an attitude that says, well, I don't need God for anything. I can take care of myself. I'm fine. That's untrue. It's arrogant. It's stupid. It's blasphemous. And that kind of attitude would send someone to hell. So, awareness of a problem is the first step in being able to do something about the problem. So Jesus says, we were going to continue on reading from 3rd chapter in Revelation, those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with them, and they with me. Now, his words, when he talked about lukewarm disciples, makes him want to vomit. That's the rebuke. That's what he doesn't like. Now he's telling you what you can do about it. But first of all, we have to decide, could he be talking about me, or is he talking about somebody else? I know he's writing to the church at Laodicea, but is there any kind of relevance in those words for me? When you have to, well, put yourself on the thermometer scale of degrees of heat in terms of your passion for being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Is there no passion at all? Are you cold? Are you barely warm? Or are you pretty hot? Where do you stand on that passion for Jesus Christ? But there's kind of a sense of urgency. Behold, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking. Open the door. If you open the door for me, I will come into your life. I want to be a part of your life. I don't want you to exclude me. I want to be intricately a part of everything about your life. And I'm here right now. I'm right outside. But I can't come in unless you open the door. But if you do, I will come into you. But this is kind of interesting. Remember we kind of started this conversation talking about vomit. And we know kind of how we would feel at the end of the day with the stomach virus if we spent the entire day in front of the bathroom stool all day long. The last thing we'd want someone to say, would you like a bowl of chili now? No. We wouldn't want to eat at all. At most, maybe a bowl of Jell-O or something really, really soft and neutral. But Jesus says, if you open the door, I will come in and eat with them, and they with me. I think it's kind of interesting, the juxtapositions of those two action verbs, to vomit and to eat. That Jesus would put both of those into the same story, in the same passage. You know, your lukewarmness makes me sick to my stomach, but if you let me into your life, I want to have dinner with you. Isn't that quite a contrast, isn't it? Not wanting to eat anything and being so distasteful. But then, if we let Christ into our life, then he wants to have dinner with us, and that's a high honor for the Son of Man to want to eat with us. Remember the story of Zacchaeus? And Jesus is walking through, and Zacchaeus is up in the tree, and Jesus stops and begins to have this conversation with Zacchaeus, a tax collector. And Jesus says, hey, come down from the tree. I'm having lunch with you at your house today. And Zacchaeus was so honored that here Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, the Messiah, has chosen him to eat in his house. And he is so grateful. So I'm going to sell half of everything that I own and give it away to the poor. I am so honored you're having dinner with me. And Jesus is saying, let me in, and I will come in, and I'll have dinner with you. I will be with you at a place where the most important things happen sometimes, around the dining table. Now, those words that we just talked about were addressed to the entire church at Laodicea in the book of Revelation. And Jesus is giving a vision to John, who's been exiled on the island of Patmos, to 7 churches in Asia, where churches are comprised of individuals, just like this one is. So even though he's addressing the entire church, which means he's also talking to each one individually, but he's also talking about the church corporately, for everybody. And this is a church that lost its zeal. I'm not sure exactly how long the church at Laodicea had been in existence, but John is probably writing somewhere around 85 AD, so some 50 years after the ascension of Jesus Christ. So maybe they've been in existence 3 or 4, maybe even 5 decades. And already in that length of time, they've lost their zeal. In fact, Jesus, I know your deeds. He doesn't compliment them in this particular address to that individual church. I just know that you're half-hearted. You're not there like you need to be anymore. You're lukewarm. You're really good for nothing. So, you know what? I think those words could be addressed to a lot of churches today. Thousands of churches. Churches that are kind of going through the motions. They're just half-hearted. They're lukewarm. They don't really care too much anymore. They become timid. There are no challenges that really get them stirred up and fired up. They've kind of lost their vision of making disciples for Jesus Christ. They just want to kind of keep the doors open, the heat on, and kind of go through. There are thousands of churches like that, believe me. And they're going out of business. In fact, our district superintendent told me one day over lunch, he said, there are some churches that would rather die than change. They'd rather go out of business than try to reinvent themselves and stay relevant to their communities. That's who Jesus is talking to. You make me sick to my stomach because you don't care anymore. Everything's more important than this. You're just giving me lip service. That's all. And I don't like it. I really don't. Justin Rutledge, every once in a while, he's not here, so I can talk about him this morning. Every once in a while, he says something that's a gem. It's really pretty profound. And maybe because his father's a minister, I'm not sure, and he's a young man. But maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, we were talking about remodeling the Family Life Center. And we were debating that and whether we should or could. And it costs a lot of money, and come up with a lot of reasons why maybe we shouldn't do that. And maybe we just, it's working like it is. Why don't we need to spend a lot of money out there? And I just kind of talked back and forth like that. And he said something, I'm going to paraphrase him, but he said something like this. If we can do something without needing God, then it probably is not a significant thing. But there are some things that we absolutely need God to do, to be challenged, to complete it, because maybe we can't do it on our own strength. And so we really need God to help us. That's what it means to step out in faith, I think, is to take that big leap of faith and say, God, to raise $175,000 in the next 6 weeks, that just seems too big. That's too audacious. That's too challenging. It's also saying, I don't believe we can do it. Even with you by our side, I don't think we can do it. You see how that minimizes Christ? that kind of attitude that says, God will surely not help us and bless us and do this great thing? I think whenever we get to the place where we just say, we really don't have the resources anymore, maybe too late at that point in time. But for a church that says, we think we can do this, and this is going to really pay big dividends because we're going to try to make this a place that can serve many, many purposes. And it's been 20 years since we've done anything. It's probably the smallest really financial project we've done in 20 years. And if we get this looking like we want it to look like, and it's going to be a new venue for worship, I think it's going to be effective. It'll be great for Vacation Bible School and any kind of function that we have in our church. And it's just going to enhance our congregation. We think it'll make a difference in disciple making. So we're going to step out in faith. We believe we can do it. I think that's a church that's got some heat, is not ready to throw in the towel, that believes it has a future, and we're still dreaming, and we're thinking and planning. What can we do to make this a better church, a more effective church to reach more people for Jesus Christ? That's a church that's thriving and can thrive. And that's the kind of church Jesus wants us to be. Would you bow your heads?